So 2 months ago, I posted a 2024 horror movies you might have missed video, and you guys seem to really love it when I highlight these like smaller, more independent movie releases of the year that tend to get swept under the rug for the year, or like they're overshadowed by the bigger releases, which is fine. That typically happens every single year, but I'm trying to really focus on making sure that I watch these as well as the larger releases. And I'm not always going to do like an individual review for a lot of these, but I like to do a little grouping of some of them just to keep them on your radar and let you know of these movies in case you have missed them. So let's do 4 more movies. If you want even more, you can check out that other video if you haven't seen it yet. And now I'll make sure to include if any of these are streaming, which I know works differently depending where you are in the world. Like Shudder, I know isn't available in every single country, but luckily I'm working with NordVPN on this video and I have a special deal just for my viewers. And by using a VPN, you're able to access movie apps like Shudder and things that aren't available in your country. Now, NordVPN isn't just great for accessing more movies and shows and things like that. It's also really essential for using the internet because of things like cyber attacks, password hacking, malware, and NordVPN has a feature called threat protection that's always running in the background, even if you're not connected to a VPN server, so you're always protected no matter where you are. Now, most of the movies in this video are only available for rent or purchase, at least here in the US, so if you are somewhere where these are in fact streaming, I'm not sure if that's the case because they are still recent releases, so it'll probably take some time, but if these are streaming anywhere where you are, please let me know in the comments so we can all use a VPN to gain access to these to stream for free. Basically, a VPN blocks your IP address so you're able to click on any country in the world and automatically gain access to that country's streaming service selection. So make sure to go to the link here or use the link in the description box down below for an exclusive deal with NordVPN with 4 bonus months for free, and it's completely risk-free with NordVPN's 30-day money-back guarantee. So the first movie in this video I wanted to include because I'm not sure where else I'd really delve into it much besides at the end of the year, but that's going to be a video where I focus on a lot of movies, so I can't really give it its full chance, I feel like, on the channel. So I really wanted to include it in one of these videos, but it was kind of a wider release, like it at least got a limited theater release. So most of you have probably seen it by now, but that is I Saw the TV Glow. A classmate introduces teenage Owen to a mysterious late-night TV show, a vision of a supernatural world beneath their own. In the pale glow of the television, Owen's view of reality begins to crack. This movie's described as a horror drama, and I think it's pretty heavy on the drama side and kind of minimal horror elements, but it is one of those that's like a more mild horror, definitely more on the artistic side. I think the cinematography in this and the color grading and everything is just beautiful. So it does have that surreal artistic style that's not going to be for everyone, but I think the ones who it is for and who that typically works for really love this movie. So this is written and directed by Jane Schoenbrunn, who also wrote and directed We're All Going to the World's Fair. That was another like weird artistic movie it was released back in 2021. I did a whole video on that one as well. And again, a similar style. So if you've seen that one, you're kind of familiar with their work. And that one also had very mixed reviews. It's kind of polarizing the way that they do movies, like write and film movies, but I think it really works. I really admire the originality within these movies, things like World's Fair and I Saw the TV Glow. Personally, I prefer I Saw the TV Glow. I feel like the story was a little bit better and like more fleshed out, and it was kind of like, it seemed like a bigger budget. The World's Fair movie was done mostly on a computer screen, so it's kind of found footage, and you'd think I would prefer that one because I'm a sucker for found footage, but I do prefer I Saw the TV Glow. I did give this movie 4 stars overall. However, I do wish there was a little bit more horror, but that's like me being selfish because it is like a horror movie, so I wanted a little bit more horror elements. What is in there is really original storytelling. First of all, I like the storytelling. This ended up being not what I expected, which it wasn't a good way. Instead, there's like this strange, like droning tension. I don't really know how to describe it, but it's just like these long scenes that are almost uncomfortable. Like some of the dialogue is just weird. Obviously the Pink Opaque, which is this television show that was created for this movie, is bizarre in itself. Like some of the imagery from that, I mean, that's some of the horror elements was within that TV show. It was just very weird, but in a good way. I do think a lot of the movie is kind of like dry, in, if that's how you would describe it, like lack of emotion a little bit in some of the delivery of lines and things. So again, this is a movie that's not going to work for everyone, but I have seen a lot of people rave about this movie as well, and the overall just message and storytelling of this movie I think is where it really shines. Next up we have a South Korean Shudder exclusive movie called Exhuma. The process of excavating an ominous grave unleashes long hidden secrets and dreadful consequences buried underneath. This is another one where the storytelling overshadowed the horror elements a little bit. Like the execution of the actual story and everything was so interesting that that's really what keeps your attention throughout this movie. It has more of a feeling of like a supernatural thriller than in-your-face horror, but when the horror is there, it's very weird and disturbing at times. I was really hooked from the beginning with this movie. I don't know if it was like the dialogue, even though when there were things like nothing's really happening, I was just really interested, and I think it had to do with the overall like concept of this movie of like them digging up this grave, and it's a supernatural horror, so of course I'm like, what's gonna happen when they dig up this grave? I think I got a little bit confused with this movie, with the message along the way, and like the story got a little bit convoluted for me in the end. Like we introduced new characters and I wasn't really sure of everything going on. That could just be a me problem, and like I don't know. But again, also went somewhere that I was not expecting. I thought this was going to be a little bit more of your straightforward, supernatural, paranormal, like, ooh, there's this ghost now roaming around because you dug up the grave and things like that. It was not just that. This does star Choi Min-sik, who, if you have seen Oldboy, I think that's his most famous role, so it was really fun to see him back. I think he's a great actor, and his performance in this was really great. Actually, I think all of the performances in this movie were really believable, which is really impressive because they do like realistic shaman rituals, and they did try to stay as accurate as possible to these actual shaman rituals that were happening. So I could really tell the effort was put in there. But overall, I really enjoyed this movie. Again, selfishly, I wanted more of that horror. This one is definitely story-driven and more thriller-y, but the horror that we got was cool. I just wanted more of it. Okay, next is a movie that is the worst rated in this video, and you might be like, why would you even recommend it or include it in one of these videos? I'm just putting these on your radar in case they're more for you than they are for me. However, I enjoyed this one, okay? Don't let the low rating scare you away from watching this one. And that is Mind, Body, Spirit. Now, this one is technically marked as a 2023 horror movie, but it was released in the US in May of this year. An aspiring yoga influencer embarks on a ritual practice left behind by her estranged grandmother. This is a found footage movie, so you might be wondering, why are you rating it so low? Honestly, almost automatically found footage movies get like a 3 from me, no matter what, really. So take my opinion with a grain of salt whenever I talk about found footage, because I'm just obsessed with found footage, and I think they will always work for me, and I will always be entertained by them, even if they are some of the worst movies I've ever seen. I don't know what it is. This just my kind of filmmaking that I just love. So like I always say, if you're a fan of found footage, you can watch this one. I gave it 2.5. That's not that low. That's like middle of the road, 2.5 out of 5. That's not terrible, okay? It's not the worst movie I have seen this year. I really liked the original story and the way that they actually filmed this, because it is a person who's trying to become like a health and wellness influencer on YouTube, and that's just so relatable to me, okay? I get it. If you've ever done like a yoga or a Pilates video from YouTube, you kind of like you know, you'll get enjoyment out of the fact that they're like creating this person who is like aspiring to be one of those. And then there's also another character in this that's like a successful fitness instructor on YouTube, and she's just like the opposite personality of our main character. She is like, her friend is like the typical influencer personality cliche that we kind of stereotype a little bit, and it's amusing. It's fun to watch. Now, it loses me a little bit with believability, and obviously it's a supernatural horror movie, so of course not everything is going to be realistic. I mean, I don't believe in ghosts, so, you know, of course it's gonna not feel very real, but it's not even that. It's like her choices sometimes and her reactions to things don't feel believable. There was a scene where she's using a kettlebell weight, much like this one. This is a 10-pounder. Hers is probably half the size of this one, and there's a scene where she's like dragging it across the floor as if it's so heavy, and like, these are not that heavy. This is 10 pounds. Like, I can move this around. I can pick it up with one hand. Hers was probably 7 pounds, if I had to guess. She was just dragging it across the floor like it weighed 100 pounds. Like, that was a little goofy. So some of the things are a little bit, like I said, unrealistic. And I get that it had to be heavy for the scene, but like, she could have picked that up. Like, even if you weren't a fitness person, you could pick up at least 10 pounds, right? However, I did enjoy the general tension of this movie and the buildup and like the gradually escalating nature of things. Like when she's doing this, her grandmother's rituals, it's just very bizarre and it just keeps getting weirder. They did obviously have a very low budget for this movie, so a lot of things aren't great looking. There's one scene with a CGI string, and I'm like, the CGI looked pretty bad. But again, beyond that, it was entertaining. It was fun, especially if you like found footage. Also, the scares were genuinely good and creepy. I am, again, a sucker for supernatural horror. You throw a weird ghosty lady in there, yeah, it's gonna freak me out a little bit. So is it the best found footage ever? No. Does it need to be entertaining? Definitely not. Okay, the last movie I'm going to mention in this video, again, I'm going to do multiple parts this year for all the little, like, smaller budget horror movies that you may have missed this year, so stay tuned. But the last one we're going to talk about in today's video is Frogman. It is yet another found footage movie. You know, if a found footage movie is being released, I'm gonna watch it. In 1999, a 12-year-old named Dallas Kyle captures footage of the mythical creature Frogman, but no one believes it is real. 20 years later, he returns to the same place with his friends to obtain irrefutable proof that it exists. Now, I put off watching this one because I just had this feeling that it would be so low budget, it almost would be unenjoyable. And yes, that can actually happen even with found footage for me. I mean, sometimes the lower the budget, the better. I mean, look at Blair Witch Project. That had a budget of nothing and it became iconic. So you could do a lot with found footage with a low budget, which I think is one of the reasons why I love it so much, and why, like I always say, if I ever made a movie, it would be found footage. And unfortunately, this one does have the classic recipe formula for found footage movie. You have the 30-minute exposition buildup of nothing really happening, right? You have the shaky, blurry camera with like the what do you call it? Like the, you know, when a VHS tape like glitches, it has that, even though it's probably a digital camera. The typical interaction of turn that thing off, and then they're like, it's not recording, you know? The like side conversation off camera when they think it's not recording them. And then that comes into play later on. Now, luckily, I don't really tire of that formula. Like, I'm okay with you doing the standard stuff that you would include in any found footage movie, as long as you provide me some like entertaining story and some good horror visuals. I'm okay. And you make me believe it a little bit sometimes, like make it feel a little realistic. Because again, that's another thing with found footage, is you can make it feel more real. You can have these people have like minimal script and have them just kind of like ad-lib the whole thing, right? So as long as you make it feel a little bit real, I'm in. Now, these characters were slightly annoying. I feel like that can also happen with found footage when they're like meant to be themselves and they're just like not acting and things like that. You can get some like weird characters, or you get people who are like over the top, like in this movie. I feel like they were just slightly annoying. Now, this movie goes places that if I told you, if I said it out loud where this movie ends up, You would laugh. You would hysterically laugh in my face that would even happen in a movie, because it is so bizarre, okay? I wish that they kept it more low-key, to be honest. Like, they could have kept it really subtle. I mean, it's called Frogman, and a frogman do they create. So it has like a unique idea. It has a lot of potential with like the same found footage formula. So it's kind of safe in regards to, you know what to expect kind of from this movie in terms of like how things are probably going to play out. Obviously things ramp up in the last like 20 minutes. I feel like found footage typically takes a while to get up there and like to really get the scares going, which can kind of be a downside to movies like this. Like with Gone Jam, as much as I love that movie and I think it's a perfect found footage movie, the first 30 minutes you could probably skip. I'm sorry. I know there's exposition in there, but there's some scenes that are just unnecessary, and that happens a lot with found footage, and that's okay. You can skip ahead a little bit, you know, just hit the 10-second if you're watching it on your phone, which is how I like to watch found footage movies personally. Just hit the 10-second every now and again. I know that's really bad advice to like skip parts of found footage movies, but I promise sometimes the story, it's adding nothing to the story, okay? Now, this one has a lot of unbelievable shots as far as like having a full-on conversation and the other person's acting like the camera is not pointed right at their face. Like any sane person would see like a camera sitting on a table pointing at them, knowing they're being filmed. Like how are we not acknowledging the camera in the room, right? However, I enjoyed it. I still enjoyed Frogman, and I think Frogman is better than Mind, Body, Spirit. If you're gonna watch one found footage movie from this video, watch Frogman. I think it's just like a classic recipe for found footage, so you can't really go wrong with some weird scares and weird visuals. Like, let me tell you, it's called Frogman. So I mean, genuinely, towards the end of this movie, I had to stop eating my snack. Like, I never get grossed out by movies where I have to stop eating. I don't get nauseous at all. And I could not eat because I was really scared where things were going, and I had a right to be. So there you have 4 more 2024 horror movies that you may have missed this year. Let me know if you've watched any of these or what movies I should include in part 3 for this year. And I hope you enjoyed, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.